Hi everyone, thank you so much for taking the time to watch this video that I've prepared today on how to get set up with event management. My name is Emily Walker and I'm one of our solution consultants here at ServiceNow. I've been with the company a little over a year and a half, but before joining ServiceNow, I spent the first 13 years of my career in corporate IT. I'm really excited to share today's content with you, especially around the event management side of the house, because this is really where a lot of stress can come from, outages on our most critical systems. And so today I want to talk through how you and your teams can get started with event management, which falls under our ITOM, IT operations management health side of the house. Just a friendly reminder that today's presentation may contain forward-looking statements that are based on the beliefs of ServiceNow and should not be used in making purchasing decisions. But with that, we will be sticking to what is currently released, and I'll be talking through some of the new capabilities that were released in our Tokyo family release. As many of you know, ServiceNow does 2 family releases each year, and Tokyo was our most current release in the fall of 2022. So we'll cover some of those exciting features that pertain to event management. Okay, so what are we going to be accomplishing today? The first is really how to get started with event management. So whether you have made the investment or you're just getting started on your implementation, or maybe you got going but ended up getting stuck, or maybe some of you are here to learn more about event management before making this investment. Secondly, we'll cover all of the key concepts and skills needed to be successful with your implementation. In the case that some of you are going to be the event admins, we'll also be discussing what are the things that you need to do technically to be able to work with the platform and fill this role successfully. And lastly, I'll be covering best practices throughout our presentation and share additional resources that will help you in your event management journey. Since this video is recorded, really the best way to get those resources is to reach out to your ServiceNow account team. So for the agenda today, we will start with an overview of event management, what it does, and what value it can provide to your organizations. This section is really for the folks tuning in that are here to learn more. And then we'll also talk about the training path that we recommend for anyone who is really going to have an active role in your organization's event management. We'll also talk through the configuration both from a manual perspective and using the guided setup. During this time, I'll also be switching back and forth from the slides to my demo instance to keep things engaging and to show you really exactly what we're talking about in the slides and how that looks within ServiceNow. And lastly, we will wrap up sharing some additional resources and takeaways from today. And again, if you would like these resources, please make sure that you reach out to your ServiceNow account team. Okay, so event management, what it does. Let's first start with ServiceNow's approach to event management and IT operations management health overall. Event management starts with helping our IT operations folks handle that overwhelming amount of alerts that they are receiving from all of their various monitoring tools, and then aggregating that data to really make it more manageable and actionable, rather than spending time sorting through data that is not quickly helping them to determine that root cause. And really that's so important because quickly determining a root cause helps us restore services more quickly as well. So our focus here is to, number one, bring in all of that data from your existing monitoring tools, and then two, and I think more importantly, is aggregate it and make it all manageable and actionable by the time it reaches your operators. And this saves us at a tremendous amount of times that our team would normally spend deciphering log data and really trying to make sense of what events have come in from our existing monitoring tools. And that's really the goal here, is that we want to be able to quickly get to the big picture of what's happening in our environment and have the ability to remediate it. The next part of event management is to drive attention to the areas that are most critical. We have to prioritize connecting that monitoring data back to the service level. And we look at it when we look at it from this perspective of what's important and what matters most. What's the business criticality of these services that we've set up and defined with service mapping? You can look at this from both the end user perspective and the customer perspective. Maybe some of these services are internal to your own employees, and maybe some are external to your customers. So as you're really getting set up with event management, it's important to ask, what are the most important services that we have that I need to monitor and manage? What services affect our user experience and our revenue? And really, what's the overall status of our most critical business services across our organization? I'm going to go ahead and build this slide out here. Understanding what all of this data is and means is really one part of the equation, but the other part of the equation is being able to take action as these events arise. And the best way you can provide action is through our automated workflows. Maybe something like expanding disk space or restarting a virtual machine. We really want these workflows at the fingertips of your operations teams so they can take relevant courses of action to solve the problem at hand. Having remediation workflows really helps to give our operators for event management the tools that they need for success within one platform. And over time, as the operations teams find those automated workflows that best remediate for specific events, these workflows really start to prove themselves. So from there, we can actually start to configure the system to run those workflows automatically and immediately upon alert generation. So we no longer have to wait for that human interaction anymore. We can start to let the system help us by setting up specific alert criteria, and we'll look at how to do that here later on in our presentation. And then the last piece of this cycle here showcases continuous improvement. So as this knowledge accumulates over time, not only is it the operations teams that are learning to leverage the system and these workflows, but the system is actually learning from itself. It's detecting which remediations and which workflows were most successful and where. Our teams are learning the system, and the system is learning your environment. And this is really what helps us lead to more of a proactive and intelligent remediation and more success for your teams on the platform. Let's talk through ingesting events and pulling in as much data from your environment as we can. So as you can see here, we work with many great partners to ingest this event data into ServiceNow. And these can be a combination of push and pull connectors that come out of the box with event management. But doing this gives us really a way to easily connect all of this data. And in turn, that helps us so we can get a clear, correct, thorough vision of really what's happening in our organization from a monitoring perspective. So how do we pull all of this data in? We can do this a few different ways. So the first one is that we can ingest data from your existing third-party monitoring tools into ServiceNow via these pre-built connectors and a mid server. So maybe that's SCOM or SolarWinds or Zabbix. We have a large number of out-of-the-box push and pull connectors able to be used within event management. We also have connectors available from the ServiceNow store, as well as third parties. So you can create these custom connectors, or you can create custom connectors, or additionally, you can also use the agent client collector for monitoring, which is ServiceNow's agent-based tool. So lots of different options here when it comes to connecting your monitoring data to ServiceNow's event management solution. Regardless of which method you choose, as this data is coming into your instance, it's being normalized so that we can sift out any redundant or unnecessary messages. And this helps us have more of that digestible number of events and actionable alerts. Another great feature here is that these alerts are also bound to their relevant CIs or configuration items that are found in our CMDB. This helps us to give more relevant and relationship information from the service level, which becomes incredibly important for troubleshooting. So if we received an event from a server that's part of a critical business service, event management is taking that business criticality into account and prioritizing the alert based upon that priority. So the relationship information that we get from those CIs is incredibly important. And this is really how we're able to pull everything together to deliver the vision of being able to quickly get to that big picture of what's happening in our environment, how critical it is, and the ability to remediate it all within one platform. Okay, so we've talked a little bit about noise reduction already, but let's keep driving home the importance of this. And this is really such a big benefit when it comes to managing events. A lot of customers come to us specifically for the correlation features and solution within event management. And a lot of times what we hear is that our operators spend numerous amounts of time sifting through events, and that's really essentially money lost in time and service outages. So when we're talking about correlating alerts, we use 4 different types of alert correlation. And these are what really help us to be able to group alerts together and have that noise reduction. We understand also that not all alerts coming in are going to be standalone alerts. A lot of them are going to be part of a larger issue and correlate back to one another. So let's talk through the 4 different types of alert correlation. The first one that we have is called temporal analysis. And this is the first type of correlation the system uses. And you can think of this one as the AI and the machine learning that we're leveraging in the background to find these patterns that have come in over time. And we're looking at them historically, and then logically grouping the alerts that are telling those same stories. The second one here, topological analysis, is when the CMDB comes into play. So here we're using CI-based patterns, and you can think causal relationships. So for example, if a server goes down, it would look at all the other CIs out there that rely on that server and create an alert based upon that, versus say if there were 15 other CIs that were dependent on that server, creating an alert for each one of those CIs. So it looks at the relationships of the CIs and consolidates the alerts together. And then the last 2 on this side are more on the human side here. So we have human defined. And this is where we're talking about your teams. You have a great team and you want to leverage that human expertise from your teams. So here you can take that knowledge and input it into the system and have logical groupings based on specific environment, things they've seen over time. So the system can really learn from their experience and take that into account. And then the last piece that we have here, semi-supervised learning. This is where we're really just saying that any technique can always be fine-tuned by someone on your team who can identify when an alert may have been added to the wrong group or a group was not recognized. So if someone is noticing that the correlation taking place isn't exactly right, we can always go in and fine-tune things up a bit. And the benefit really of tuning is that it feeds the machine learning to continuously improve for future performance, which is great because we're always wanting our instance to gain more intelligence and learn exactly how we want things set up. All right, let's switch and talk about some of the resources that we recommend to help you with your event management journey. We highly recommend that you or your event management administrators take some form of event management training through ServiceNow. So whether that is our self-paced course or instructor-led course, either one. I've personally taken the instructor-led 2-day course and I found that very helpful. It was a combination of instruction and labs, and our instructor, who was actually also a ServiceNow employee, even gave us some small group work to do together, which kept things really engaging and interactive. The other great part is that we see a lot of our partners and customers in these classes too. So I highly recommend taking it if you have the time. You can also find these when you go to our Now Learning site. That's where you can register, and it's just nowlearning.servicenow.com, and then search for Event Management Fundamentals. We are now going to spend some time talking through the manual configuration steps, and then later I will show you steps for using the guided setup feature. So the manual configuration route, this really kind of breaks down into 6 high-level configuration steps that we'll go through in more detail. But it really starts with activating the event management plugin by submitting a request via the Now Support portal. Once you've activated your event management plugin, you really need to make sure that you have a validated mid server installed and active. And this step is critical because this is going to be what's pulling that monitoring data back into ServiceNow. So if you have the resources, we also recommend dedicating a mid server or mid servers for event management. We also recommend, if possible, deploying that mid server on a Windows or Linux. Typically, the Windows will gather all of the CIs versus Linux, where it can only gather Linux CIs. So we would kind of recommend in that case where you would need all configuration items pulled in to look at putting it on a Windows machine. And you may actually already have done this step or gone through the mid-server setup. If your teams are using any other parts of ITOM discovery, like the agent client collector or discovery or any other use cases for having a mid-server. So once you have your plugin activated and your mid-server deployed and validated, that's really when we can move into step 3. And this is where we're going to reach back out to your existing monitoring tools and push or pull that data into ServiceNow. And you'll do this through either our out-of-the-box connectors or custom connectors. When first starting out, we do recommend leveraging the out-of-box connectors if possible. You can find these connectors on our product documentation page. So if you go to docs.servicenow.com and then search event management connectors, here's where you'll be able to see exactly what monitoring tools we support out of the box. The second point to this slide is to make sure that you really get the right teams involved when you're connecting this event data back from your monitoring tools, because you're going to need those connection parameters and credentials. And not only that, but maybe the monitoring team has more tools than you actually knew about. So it's really important that your teams are capturing everything and working together to really build this out. And once you have that event data coming into ServiceNow via those connectors, this is where you really want to start setting up some different rules for what these events and alerts are going to be looking like. So the first set of event rules, this is basically where we are defining if and when an event should be escalated into an alert on the operator workspace or in our new service operations portal on the service dashboard. You would get a chance, I'll get a chance to show you this when we switch over to the demo portion, but our service operations workspace was part of our workspaces releases later or earlier in the year. But with our event management rules, there are a couple of different ways you can do this, such as defining thresholds, and you can use CI-based alerts. This is contributing to really that noise reduction benefit that we keep emphasizing. And here again, another best practice, we do recommend leveraging those out-of-the-box event rules to start. One more thing that I want to point out here is that from now on, as of our Tokyo family release, event rules will support executing multiple event rules on the same event. This change really came about to help give customers more flexibility. For example, when we get into the event rules, the transform and compose section is where we'll see it shortly, but sometimes include more general parts that you and your teams might want to reuse for other event rules. So this is one of our new Tokyo release features. So once we've defined what events generate an alert, we want to define the specifics of what alerts actually do. And here's where we're really starting to leverage the workflow automation capabilities of ServiceNow. So maybe actions such as automatically generating an incident for specific alerts, or automatically kicking off remediation workflows depending on the criteria of that alert, and maybe even without human interaction. So just like the event rules, alert management rules have some out-of-the-box options to support as you're getting started. Here's where I'm going to call out another great Tokyo release feature, and that is scaling out alert management rules. Previously, before a Tokyo release, there was really only one job that could take care of processing alert management rules. So if you've got a lot of alert management rules that need to be processed, it could end up causing a bit of a backup and queuing. So that was addressed in the Tokyo release. And now we have the capability to have more multiple jobs that are going to be taking care of that as your alert rules scale efficiently. Okay, and for detailed instructions on rule creation, you can also go to our product docs site, again, docs@servicenow.com, and search for create or edit an event rule and create an alert management rule. And lastly, our sixth step, alert correlation rules and maintenance rules. So far we've defined what generates an alert and what happens when those alerts are generated. But now we need to define our alert correlation rules, which allow you to define how alerts are related and how they're grouped together into primary and secondary alerts. So maybe a good example of this is if you have a server in your organization and it goes offline, you don't need to see additional alerts to show that the virtual machines or applications running on those servers are also down. Instead, those additional alerts are secondary alerts, and they're grouped under the primary alert. We also need to set up maintenance rules, which simply set specific CIs if they are in a maintenance status. And this is where it helps us to prevent those false alerts or unnecessary alarms in our operations workspace or service operations dashboard if something is resulting from maintenance or versus actually being down. And by default, any CI that has an active change window is automatically marked as being in a maintenance mode. And this is another great reason of why having IT service management teams and our IT operations teams working within the service operations workspace and on the same platform so beneficial. All right, let's jump into the demo. So the first place that I am showing you here is our event management overview dashboard. And this module uses performance analytics to present data within this dashboard for you to better visualize and understand your processes and drive that continual improvement. So here we're looking at the event management overview dashboard. And this is all out of the box. Really, the only thing I did here was I moved my widgets around. But this dashboard includes the capabilities and functions here where you can add new widgets. So you can come in here and look for other performance analytics widgets that are available. The other options that you have here are you can actually share this out to specific groups and users and roles. Or you can come in here and kind of customize this and configure this a little bit more. So however you want to kind of group these alerts together is completely up to you. The other place where all of this data comes together for your operators to use is in our operator workspace. And I'll show that just briefly, but where I really want to focus is on our new service operations workspace and specifically the service dashboard. So first, this is our operator workspace view. So if you've ever seen event management prior to the Tokyo release, this is most likely what you are looking at. But when our workspaces were developed, this is our service operations workspace. And here is where we really have the ability to have this configurable workspace for not only our operations teams, but our service desk teams, giving them the ability to collaborate and work together on all of these critical events that come in. So you can see the same detail here that we had seen in our operator workspace. Different UI, a little bit more modern and advanced, but kind of the same thing here is when we come into our operator workspace, we first notice that we have a lot of our services that we have mapped and put into an operational state from service mapping. Here, And then they have this color coding based upon the severity breakdown. So our order status is showing us that we have a critical outage happening. The other thing that we can do here, we can group these by severity, by business criticality, location, lots of customizable ways to view the data here from this workspace. We can also come over here and we can actually filter services by alerts. So looking at the most critical alerts first. Let's go back in to our event management. We're going to start really when we're talking about getting this set up. The first thing that we're going to do is going to our connector definitions. So event management, again, provides many connectors to either push or pull events from external devices. Connectors, you can find those again from the store as well as those third parties, and you can also create those custom connectors. But this is the table that lists the connectors that are provided out of the box with event management. So I'm going to open up SolarWinds and show you this one. And these are templates and funnels that establish that connection, the schedules, and then the connector instance is where we're actually going to set up down here. Sorry, the connector instance is where we're actually going to set up and make sure that we have those events being pulled in on a specific schedule. Okay, and so let's first go into our connector instance here. And what we have, this really helps us to make sure that we are scheduling the frequency of the event and also making that connection. So one of the first things that you're going to do before marking this active is going in and setting up your host IP of where you want to connect, and then the credentials. So for this one, I had to actually go in and make a new credential set. You can also come down here and you're going to want to make sure that you give this a mid server that you've already probably set up within somewhere close to that environment that has that reachable IP. Once you have that done, you can come into test connection. And this is pretty quick, so it shouldn't take that long. I tested this yesterday. There we go. So now we really have all of those those events being able to come into our ServiceNow instance. So the next spot that we're going to go, once we have our connector definition and our connector instance set up and tested, is into our all events. So we're going to click into one of these. I'm going to do some filtering here for just a minute. I'm going to take off. Let's go up here. And right now I'm looking at events that were created today. But I also want to filter out one of the sources. I'm going to filter out this EM. I'm going to say is not EM self-monitoring. And the EM self-monitoring is really our event management self-monitoring tool that helps to let you know if there is something wrong with event management itself. So right now, what we're looking at when we come through this window is we have all of our events, the time of the events, the source. So I have a few different sources here. I can group by source, and I can actually see that I have our ITOM agent, so our agent client collector. I have some SCOM, I have some vRealize, Zabbix, Dynatrace. I have all of my sources. I'm going to ungroup that though, so I can kind of walk through this a little bit more. The other part that we're able to see here is our description. So kind of a high level idea of what could potentially be happening on this. The node, so which configuration item in our CMDB is this event going back and finding to, if it can find it. We also have the type here, so maybe it's giving you some more information about that specific event that's happening. And if we come over here, again, resource, similar to node, just a different way of saying which configuration item we're actually looking at. We also have the state of what the state of that event is. So has it been processed? Is it waiting to be processed? And then the severity. If an alert has already been assigned to it, you would actually go in and you could see that alert right here. Let's go in and we're going to click in on one of these. So let's click in on this one. And so once an event is processed, that basically means that some sort of first level filtering has already been applied, and it's compared data to the raw event to the event rules to determine if that criteria has been met to actually generate an alert. So we'll see those event rules shortly, but this is really where we're going to be able to see that noise reduction taking place by turning those events into alerts. So when we get to that service operations workspace or our operator workspace, we aren't seeing every single event. We're only seeing those alerts that have been grouped together. So I want to call out a few things here. Again, kind of the same data that we were getting before from that other view. But the couple points or areas that I want to point out here are, the first one is processing notes. So here we can really see what logic was taking place and how the event became an alert. And then the other one to point out is additional information. So this is where any raw data that isn't explicitly mapped to a defined field from that third-party tool is stored. And this is important because we don't really want to get rid of that data. Maybe some of it's important, and at some point we would want to map that to a field, but we need a place to put it. So we put it in this box, and this can actually help us to highlight maybe different trends or patterns. And then over time, you can start to customize your event rules based on this data. So it's important that we keep it. All right. The other place from here is, let's move into our event rules. This is where we're actually going to be able to see all of the event rules that are helping us to classify those events to an alert and actually make them available in our operator workspace or service operations workspace. We have a lot of these pre-built out of the box rules here, and I'm going to filter this on source, with the source being Zabbix. All right. And with these pre-built rules that are available, you're able to tune or activate or turn on for your specific environment as each of them apply. The one that we are going to look at right now, we're going to take a look at this Zabbix metric CPU. And we can click into any one of these, and it's the same interface that we would be having if we were creating our own custom event rule. But we're going to stick with the out-of-the-box rules, and hopefully my demo instance decides to come back. Let's give it a little refresh. Okay, there we go. So we have our Zabbix metric CPU event rule, and here we see the name, we see the source and order. So if you have any of those other event rules, they're going to be processed in that order. Remember, higher the number, lower the number, higher the priority here with ServiceNow. And then, so we can walk through this wizard here to kind of help us set up this event rule. The next spot we're going to go to is event filter. And here's where we're qualifying all of the events coming in from Zabbix, which of those events are coming in, which should be an alert. And here you can also create specific ignore rules as well. But the logic we're seeing here is that if an event is dealing with CPU, it's probably important enough to be an alert that is seen in our workspaces. So you can also add new expressions. So whether those are from a pattern or a regex over here, we're really starting to be able to customize our alerts to cater to what our teams want here. The next part is our transform and compose alert output. And here is where we have a preview of how that expected raw data looks for the event that we are specifying and how that raw data is mapped to the desired fields. This is very similar to the event form that we just looked at. And we can actually see here from this other side, we can just drag these these different data points in if we wanted to add anything else. Okay, the next threshold. So this is not active out of the box, but here's where we're setting a threshold if we needed. Maybe we only want these alerts or these events to become alerts if this event is happening within a specific time frame. And again, these are fully customizable. And then the last piece here is binding. So we typically recommend leaving this alone as much as possible. This is basically the logic that's associating the different data points that you're bringing in with these types of events to the related configuration items in your CMDB. Okay, let's go back. And if you look up here at the top, this calculating groups, it turned it over. And so what we have here is this smart little banner at the top telling us that there are some recommended rules that are being recommended based on our environment using machine learning. So it's looking at the events and it's seeing, actually, there we go. And it's seeing what trends and what event data might help us with noise reduction and to help make alert management even more efficient, or event management even more efficient. So this can be a really great starting place. If you aren't sure where to start, you can use machine learning to help. Let's switch over into all alerts. Sorry, our alert management rules. And here's where we're able to use action and automation that on those events that we have just kind of walked through the event management rules on. And this is really the part that we're going to be able to do those remediations and avoid outages much quicker upon that alert generation. So the one we're going to walk through today is creating an alert on, an incident on a primary alert. So we can come down here, create incident on primary critical alert. Actually, we're going to go create incident on primary. Okay, now that we are in our alert management rule for creating an incident on the primary, let's walk through a couple of things here. The first one is we're going to click through and walk through the steps here. And again, automation can sometimes be a little scary at first, depending on what it could be doing in our environment. So starting small with something like creating an incident on an alert is really a great starting place here. And so we have the name, we can see that it's active. We can also see any alert executions that have already, that this is already run on. So we can actually open up Flow Designer. We see here that all of these actions are being done by Flow Designer. So I already have this open. But what it looks like is we're running through these series of actions and progressing to see, is this alert classification, is it a security incident? If it's not, okay, then we're going to go ahead and check to see if it's in maintenance mode. We're going to look up a record. We're going to follow all of these steps that are part of that automation workflow. The other parts that we have here that we can walk through are our alert filter. So if we have any alert criteria, here's where we can set it. And this is similar to the event rules that we saw earlier. And then actions. Here's again, kind of exactly, I know I showed the Flow Designer flow a little bit ago, but here is the actual link to that flow. Going back, we would just see all the executions that had been already taken place. And so this is where we're really able to create those specific remediations using Flow Designer. Okay, let's switch back in to our presentation. Give me just a second. So now we are going to go into our guided setup features within ServiceNow. And the guided setup is a really great option if you're looking to accelerate the setup of event management. These guided setups were a way to really give you kind of a UI that helps you be able to see the value faster and start really taking actions that are appropriate for implementation here. This is a great way if you are not working with a partner, or if you're doing self-implementation, or maybe you're setting this up in a dev environment or a sub-production environment to test it out. So the guided setup is really a facilitated UI that helps give you the exact steps one by one and really handholds you through this process. And this can be such a big benefit if you are newer to ServiceNow, or maybe have a little less experience on the platform and want some assistance with getting started. So during the guided setup, you'll really get to set up using the best practices that are out of the box for all the things that are green here listed on that slide. There are a couple of technical prereqs, even if you are using the guided setup, and this will look pretty familiar from the manual setup steps. Same first three steps as last time when we were looking on the manual side, but that includes activating the event management plugin, installing and configuring your mid server, and finally configuring that event source connector. So we will walk through these in just a few minutes on my demo instance. Here on this slide, we've mentioned a few different times throughout the day that you really want to work with your teams and be collaborative when you're deploying event management. Even if you've already started to deploy event management, it's really never too late to loop in those other teams and really make this a collaborative effort. There are probably teams throughout your organization that can really benefit from event management, and maybe they haven't been thought of. So you're going to be really working with your teams to understand what alerts are coming in and what of these alerts or what of these events should be escalated to an alert. So making sure that they're aware and making sure that you're working with the right team to get the right access you need. So again, just really being as collaborative as possible to see the most success as you get up and running with event management. Okay, let's switch in to my demo instance. And here we have our IT operations management guided setup. And I found that just by typing in ITOM guided. And from this first window, we're going to see down here, we have our maturity model. So we're looking at kind of this pyramid of how ITOM gets implemented, and really starting with more of the discovery side, or starting on the ITSM side with incident problem change and our CMDB. And then from there, we're moving into more of that availability. And then from there, the agility side of the house. So let's go back up here to continue, where we can actually get started. And we're going to see here really how we break down the setups per specific solution within ITOM. So first we have our mid server, and that's really regardless of if you're doing discovery or service mapping or event management, this is really the starting place of where you want to go, is getting those mid servers set up. So you can actually come in here and click in these tasks. Some of this, when you click configure, will either take you to a product doc site with instructions on how to do it, or it will take you actually to the window here within the portal where you can actually do the configurations. So let's go back, and we're going to go down to event management. And we can see when we open this up, really we kind of break these into chapters of what work is going to be needing to be done. So the first one, we have our event sources and properties. The next, we have event rules, and then knowledge, tasks, and automation. So similar to what we walked through on the manual side, but here we're just having this more structured in a UI that your teams can work through here in the guided setup. The other thing to point out is that you can actually assign specific tasks out to your team members. So maybe this isn't one single person that's doing your implementation. Maybe you have a whole team that's helping through this, so you can actually go in and assign out these specific tasks. But what we're looking at here under properties for the event sources, we're looking at properties, enabling event management, the self-event management healing property. So you can come in here and actually configure that directly within here. And so on. Connectors, if we wanted to add any listeners, maybe for a web service on a mid server or an SNMP trap or email listeners, we can do all of that here as well. So just clicking through each of these different steps. And we are starting to wrap up. But before we completely wrap up, I want to go over our key takeaways from today. So we set up event management, and we got those monitoring tools connected. Whether your teams really choose to do this manually or through that guided setup, we've pretty much covered it today. And really, we've helped to establish those proactive rules that help the noise reduction and automatically remediating events. And lastly, there are some additional resources that will be really beneficial as you go through your event management journey. So first, we have our ServiceNow ITOM Health Overview and our event management product documentation. And these will be really great for getting started beyond what we've covered today. If you want to take a deeper dive, here is the link for AI Ops and Visibility Dummies book. And this ebook covers everything from the introduction to AI Ops to use cases and how we can deliver AI Ops with ServiceNow. The next one is we have our white paper for ITOM Health Performance. And this includes test cases, not only for event management, but also for health log analytics, which is an add-on to our ITOM Health or part of our AI Ops Enterprise package. And lastly, regardless of which part of the platform you're focused on, is our Now community with different forums for each area of the platform and our Customer Success Center. So again, if you're watching this recording and you don't have access to click these hyperlinks, please make sure that you reach out to your ServiceNow account team and ask them for this slide deck. And with that, that wraps up today's presentation. I hope that all of you have found this information helpful that was presented and that you were able to gain more of an understanding on really what it takes to be successful with ServiceNow's event management. Again, I'm Emily Walker, and thank you for your time today.